Let's get it started with, again, you being a Big 12 guy, and it's crazy to say that, the Arizona State, the Big 12 champion, playing former Big 12 member Texas yesterday. I guess the first question we got to ask is, number one, did you think that was a targeting call?
Yeah, I absolutely did. I don't think there's any way to argue against it. I think the only argument at this point would be, how much of a difference it made in the outcome of the game. Arizona State had really struggled all year in terms of field goal kicking. They literally had to host an open tryout towards the end of the year. Now, they did find another kicker who was not part of that open tryout, but he was already on, was already on the team, and he was considerably better, especially in the Big 12 championship game and in the game yesterday. But look, a lot still needed to happen for them to win the game, right? So I think, what happened, the outcome of the game is one of those things that's still to be decided. So I'm the type, I hate to complain about officials dictating the outcomes of games in sports. I know that officials' calls sometimes play a huge role in it. They absolutely missed the targeting call. I don't think there's any question about that. But whether or not it impacted the outcome of the game, that to me is the bigger question. I don't think it did. Because Arizona State still had opportunities to win the game, and they didn't. And at the end of the day, they come down with a stop on 4th and 13 instead of giving them a 28-yard touchdown in overtime. They win the game. So, yes, it was a targeting call. Yes, the officials missed calls throughout the course of the game. And when you play sports, you have to take it out of the officials' hands. You can't rely on officials' calls to be the be-all, end-all. You have to take it out of their hands by making plays to win the game, and Texas did, and Arizona State did not.
Hey, Ari, let's talk about the guy that decided to take it out of the officials' hands and do it himself, Quinn Ewers. I want to bring this up because he threw the pick, and then all of a sudden, 4 drives later, double overtime victory, a thriller. And I think a lot of UT fans who still don't believe in Quinn Ewers, you got to give him his credit for that.
Well, he was spectacular, down the stretch of this football game. It's weird because he was really good at the beginning. He was not so good in the second and third quarters, and then he was really good at the end. Mm-hmm. And, to your point, CA, that's money time. And when they needed him to be at his best, he was absolutely at his best. I would also, I think Steve Sarkisian is a really good coach. He is, without a doubt, one of the smartest offensive minds that we have in college football. But there's certainly some moves that he made within this game and decision-making that I think was not favorable.
Oh, yeah.
Especially not going for 2 instead of kicking the extra point to go up 16 instead of going for 2 to go up 17, where now it had to be a 3-score game as opposed to the 2-score game that stayed. Then I also think, you've got to lead, run the football. I know you're not effectively running it, but you're still moving the line of scrimmage. Arizona State was in many ways getting owned up front. Now, schematically, Brian Ward, the defensive coordinator for Arizona State, did a really good job because they only averaged 1.8 yards per carry to Texas. But, you got to lead late in the game. You got to figure out a way to get your running game going instead of you're trying to get Quinn Ewers airing it out, which is what led to that interception. And so, it was just wild. They were up 16 points, and you're thinking they can put this thing away, and they didn't because I think a lot of Steve Sarkisian's decision-making there, which is something we've seen from him over the course of his career, icing games, decision-making down the stretch, not exactly, the most favorable for him.
One other note, and I totally agree with you. And one other note about Quinn Ewers, I got to give major props to Alec Medford, who's on the KNC Masterpiece. He was on with Blake earlier today, and he brought up a big point for all the people with the quarterback controversy down there in Austin, and should it be Quinn Ewers or should it be Arch Manning? He brought up the point that Quinn Ewers actually has as inconsistent as he is, as injury-prone as he can be, he actually has a high football IQ because he changes things right there. He changes. He looks over the defense. Yeah. In other words, I'm not saying he's just totally brilliant, and Alec wasn't either, but he was just saying at this point in his career, he can change an audible better than Arch Manning can because he's seen all these defenses and stuff before, and that's what won them that game.
There's no question about that. And when you look and see the 4 teams that are left right now, it's in the NFL and in other sports, we have sort of the history to go off of in terms of, hey, this is how many times these top seeds have made it this far, or, and so on and so forth. There obviously is no historical trends to go off of, but in the first version of this playoff, the 5 conference champions all lose before the semifinals. And so, all 4 teams that had a bye lost. So, you could certainly make a case that, playing in that first round game helped you, but I'd dig a little bit deeper than that and look at the quarterbacks that are left. You've got experienced, savvy quarterbacks. Will Howard started at Kansas State and played multiple years now, at Ohio State. Obviously, Quinn Ewers, we know his story and how long he's been around. Riley Leonard at Notre Dame. And so when I look at the 4 teams that are left, and I look at the teams that were eliminated, experienced quarterbacks, just to your point, CA, that stands out more than anything else. Because, Quinn Ewers, like, going into that matchup with Sam Leavitt, like, Leavitt is a redshirt freshman quarterback who's, I think, eventually going to be a first-round pick. But, I mean, he's got a lot of growth still to show, and especially in that department. But Ewers, you're right, he sort of knew exactly the different looks that he needed and how to win the game. And, I mean, look, that throw he made on 4th down, that won the game for him.
Exactly, and that was an audible.
No, well, and I'll tell you what, that 4th down, and you know what, I and as for as much has been made about the Arizona State calling an all-out zero blitz on that play, I don't know that enough's been said about the route that was run. I mean, the kid shook the defender. I mean, he ran a route because he doesn't get as wide open as he is if he doesn't run the route that he does. Yep. That being said, with talking about Quinn Ewers, now we've heard all kinds of speculation about, will he go to the NFL? We've got Todd McShay saying that he's talking to NFL people saying, look, this kid needs to come back another year. Then you're hearing reports that it's anywhere from $4 to $6 million that's going to be thrown at Quinn Ewers if he does decide he wants to come back. So, I mean, look, if financially it may not be a bad idea. I mean, he's going to get paid one way or the other. What are you hearing? Or, if you were advising Quinn Ewers, Oregon's a team that's going to possibly get thrown out there as possibly wanting a new quarterback. Where are you at on or North Carolina's got that cheddar now too. Where do you see Quinn Ewers doing next year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's had Texas been eliminated already, this question would have much easier answer, I feel like. And so the more Texas wins, I mean, Texas has a home game now against Ohio State on Friday night, and then
AT&T Stadium.
And then their biggest foe this year, the team they were 0-2 against, Georgia, is already gone. So now you either have Penn State or – so, I mean –
Also, one other subplot, Quinn Ewers going up against the team that he first signed with, Ohio State, him and his mullet back then.
And not only that, but if you look into some of the stories that are written about his time there, I mean, he was bullied, and, I mean, it was a hard year for him.
It really was. That's why he brought his talents right back to Texas.
But, look – if he wins a national championship, he's going to the NFL.
Yeah, I agree.
So in some ways, it's funny that we talk about this because I have no doubt in my mind there's probably $6 million offers on the table from other programs to get him to go there. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that most of those other programs know that they're pretty committed to going to Arch next year. And so that's where that comes from. I think people were like, this sport has just gone so poorly that this is what's happening now. I mean, this is, Texas was deciding to move on from Quinn Ewers to go to Arch Manning anyways, regardless of the outcome of this season.
Right.
Because I think that was the timeline and expectation for not just for the Manning family, but for Sark, for Texas, and for Ewers. And so, so now, again, I think if they win the national championship, I think he's gone. He's going to end up becoming a first-round pick. I think if they don't win the national championship, I think he ends up transferring potentially and going somewhere else. I don't think going out of the I don't think it's out of the question in the realm of possibility that he leaves to go to the NFL draft, even if they don't win the national championship, because the guy's got a ton of talent. He was one of the top rated recruits coming out of high school. That stuff matters a ton. So to me, the most likely scenario is that he ends up going to the NFL draft, but I think that it seems very unlikely that he ends up back at Texas next year.
By the way, this just came out today. Jalen Milroe, Alabama's quarterback, just declared for the NFL draft. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's going to be a loaded class. I mean, I think Carson Beck is going to he's going to test really, really high, and I think there's going to be a major conversation once we get down to it between Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Carson Beck. Mike Bobo, the Georgia offensive coordinator, when he watched this Georgia team, I mean, this looks like what Georgia looked like before they won national championships, where they're just so reliant on their defense, and they're just very much, conservative offensively. This is not the Todd Monken Georgia offense that we saw for many years that was explosive. I think when push comes to shove, a lot of teams in the NFL are going to see that Carson Beck is probably held back by this Georgia offense this year.
You know what? I will definitely have you come on again when they do the combine, because you're the first person I've heard say it like that. So I'm intrigued by that. Is there anybody that needs a national championship? And look, of course, we've still got, we talk about the quarterbacks that are left. I mean, we've got some heavyweights as far as coaches are concerned left in this these semifinals.
Somebody's job's on the line.
Well, here's my question for you. Is anybody look, Sark's not going anywhere. I mean, I think we all feel like, look, Marcus Freeman already signed himself an extension. James Franklin signed an extension. Ryan Day just feels like,
Day,
what's the day, right?
He better make it to the championship game.
Does anybody need a title more right now than Ryan Day?
No, but I'll tell you this, not to say that Sark would be on the hot seat by any stretch of the imagination, but, I mean, Texas has 3 NFL offensive linemen on their offensive line. Now, we'll see if Cam Williams can go, but with DJ Campbell and Kelvin Banks, I mean, I just don't know when you can expect if you're Texas to have this good of an offensive line around you. And so it's like, okay, they've got playmakers, they've got running backs, but that's never been the issue, guys. We've covered Texas football for so many years, and like the difference between this version of Texas and the last 10 years version of Texas is their lines, the offensive and defensive lines. Like that was what they never had. They always were able to recruit skill position players really well. They recruited, the quarterback. I mean, they recruited at a very high level for the last, forever, it seems like. And certainly in the last, 2 decades when they were stumbling and fumbling all over the field. So they finally now have the piece that makes them really, really whole and really, really good. But like, you got to win and take advantage of it. So in some ways it feels like, oh, Texas is kind of ahead of schedule. But I think when you look at this roster and what they're going to lose after this year, there's probably a lot more pressure on them to win because, look, like we said earlier, I don't think Quinn Ewers is back with Texas, whether he's going to the NFL or going somewhere else. They're going to lose Kelvin Banks. They're going to lose DJ Campbell. They're going to lose Cam Williams. So they're going to have to replace the bulk of that offensive line. I think all 3 of those guys are going to be starting for NFL teams next year, which is how good they are. So, yes. I mean, Ryan Day is 100% under a ton of pressure to win. That fan base is just beyond expectations. It's absurd. And so, yeah, I mean, they lose this game, and it feels like all of the goodwill that they earned, in winning the first 2 rounds goes out the window. But I think there's a lot of pressure on Sark and Texas, too, because who knows when they're going to have an offensive line like they have right now that allows them to run this offense like they're able to run it.
Okay, all right, before we let you get out of here, the Final Four is set. You got Penn State versus Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. You got Texas versus Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Who's the favorite out of these 4 teams, and who is the long shot of these Final Four?
Well, it's so interesting, CA, and I'm glad you posed the question like that because Penn State and Notre Dame, in recent history, those are the 2 teams that lose in these spots.
Yeah.
But they're playing each other. So one of them has to win. But, Notre Dame has won 2 playoff games. Penn State has won 2 playoff games. Both of those teams, seemingly every time they got to this spot, would lose in those games. So they've gained a ton of confidence. I think Drew Aller right now is playing at a very, very high level. But give me Notre Dame to win. I'm just a huge Marcus Freeman fan. I think he ran circles tonight around Kirby Smart in terms of schematics. So I like Notre Dame to win that one. And then, I think the favorite here, so the answer to your question is the favorite to me is whoever wins the Texas-Ohio State game. I think those are, if we're power ranking the 4 teams left, I probably have Texas and Ohio State at the top of that list. So, I think the longest shot here would be Penn State, Notre Dame. I think the favorite would be Texas or Ohio State. And, and again, I mean, Notre Dame and Penn State, it's sort of ironic they're matched up here because those are the 2 teams that consistently lose in this spot. And then, obviously Texas has the history that they have. They're trying to overcome some of their demons and get past this round. And then Ohio State is trying to get, they won the first ever 14 playoffs, and now they're trying to win the first ever 12-team playoff.
Well, the Catholic in me is going to pull for Notre Dame. So, look, I wish Riley Leonard could throw the football downfield, but I think they're going to have their hands full with Penn State. Last thing, this has absolutely nothing to do with college football. KU loses its first conference opener in 33 years. You spent all this money on NIL just to have the 2 guys sitting on the bench. Meanwhile, KJ Adams, who I love, okay, Austin native, God bless him, all right, can't shoot the ball to save his life. Still putting 30 minutes out there. DeJuan Harris, who I feel like has been there since you and I were at KU. What's our worry meter at right now with KU basketball?
It's pretty high, and now they have to go to UCF on Sunday. And UCF went on the road and beat Texas Tech in Lubbock. And road games are tough to win in the Big 12.
Yeah, they are.
The old.
Hell, they beat you last year.
Right, at UCF, right, and they're coming off a huge win at Texas Tech, the first game of the season. So, and they're really good. They've got 3 guards that can score. Jordan Ivy Curry is a stud. So, I mean, look, far be it from me to tell Bill Self how to coach. The guy is unbelievable. He'll forget more about basketball than I'll ever know. But, yeah, it seems sort of odd that you've got a guy in Ryland Griffin who is 6'7", was a started for a Final Four team last year, shooting 40% from three, and he can't seem to get minutes on a team that's one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. I think Bill Self has to sort of take a look in the mirror and figure out rotational-wise if KJ Adams needs to be playing as many minutes as he's playing. I probably would rather see A.J. Storr and Ryland Griffin get more shots. I'd just rather go down with those guys swinging as opposed to the same exact approach we saw last year from KU. Thanks for letting me vent. This is
I was about to say, y'all commiserating over here. We could have done that on the commercial break.
You saying that, I'll tell you
go
what.
Go Baylor, go TCU, go Boomer.
I'll tell you what, you enlivened my soul just now saying all that because it's good to hear.
Man, we love you,
I'm not
Ari.
the only one saying it. Ari, great stuff from you, my friend. Happy New Year. Let's do this again when draft season rolls around.
Happy New Year, gents. Great to be talking to you. Take care.